May we see your invitation?
Odd groups got left, even groups got right.
Master, I hope I served you well.
More dogs, more dogs.
Too soon.
Welcome back everyone. Today's video is going to be going over the top 5 things you need to know as a protection paladin and the Burning Crusade. First up, we have our taunt ability. So in the Burning Crusade, paladins do get a taunt, thank god. It only took them like one expansion. But this taunt is still not a normal taunt in the traditional sense when compared to like warriors and bear tanks, simply because we have to cast it on the party member that is actually getting hit or has aggro on something. So this macro that I'm about to put up on the screen now basically allows us to create a macro that will let us use this spell as if it were like any other taunt. And this just kind of simplifies the tanking process and kind of helps save you a couple seconds from having to click on the person, cast the spell. This one just creates an all-in-one button for you to use. So it's super important. Be sure to use it. Number 2. Alright, so the next thing we're going to look at is the caps that you want to reach as a paladin tank. So in the Burning Crusade, the defense cap to become uncrushable against bosses is 490. Keep in mind this is primarily just looking at raids. This does kind of include the 10, 15, and 25 man content. For dungeons, you still want to have a high amount of defense, but a metric ass ton of stamina. But we'll cover that in a second. Definitely the priorities when finding and looking at stats on gear is going to be defense, stamina, spell damage, and block. If you're able to get your hands on some kind of expertise, spell hit, or melee hit, definitely try to get it if you're able to, but keep in mind that expertise, spell hit, and melee hit are kind of afterthoughts in terms of what you want to be statting towards as you're leveling and collecting gear and getting into dungeons and raids. So for number 3, we're actually going to be looking at the importance of spell power for protection paladins in the Burning Crusade. This sounds counterintuitive in some measures, but I learned this the hard way in Classic WoW. For the first half of Classic WoW, I was statting primarily as if I was a warrior, so I was stacking plus hit and crit and all this other stuff, but as I was getting the gear, I realized that it didn't really benefit me, you know, in terms of like looking on threat meters or looking at the damage meters, just because it wasn't what I needed to scale. And then once I started getting a hold of some T2 and more access to spell power weapons, I saw a humongous jump in my threat output and my damage output. And that's simply because we are essentially battle mages. And so for us to scale and to like really be competitive in terms of DPS and threat, we need to have spell power. So there's an important rule that I created in Classic WoW, just for paladins that were looking to tank, and it was a 2/3 rule. It's important to remember that 2/3 of your threat output as a protection paladin is going to be from spell power, and the other 1/3 comes from your melee damage. That could be auto attacks or melee crits and etc. But as long as you keep in mind about the 2/3 rule, it will really help you when you're maybe hitting the defense cap and you need to figure out what direction you want to go in terms of like getting that extra little bit of damage in or that extra little bit of spell power and etc. So without a doubt, if you come across anything with like defense, stamina, and spell power, I would say take it and keep it and hold on to it until you can find something better, because that spell power is going to take you a lot farther than, you know, plus 1% chance to hit. I promise you. Alright, number 4, we're going to be taking a look at the mana issues. So in the Burning Crusade, they really did kind of overhaul kind of how they wanted to go about dealing with the Paladin class in terms of its mana issues, because in Classic it really did have a lot of mana issues when looking at Retribution and Protection spec. Holy spec was different just because the Divine Illumination really helped us with getting mana back from critting with spells. But in the Burning Crusade, as a protection paladin, thankfully we have Spiritual Attunement. This is basically a passive ability that gives the paladin mana regen when they're being healed by other friendly targets. So just whenever you get healed for missing health, it gives you some mana back based on, I think, 8% of the missing health. I'll put up the Spiritual Attunement thing up on the screen, but you can read it. I'm just kind of talking at the moment. But the one thing I'd like to highlight though is even though we have this Spiritual Attunement, and even if you downrank, you're still going to be needing to bring some mana pots to the raid encounters or dungeon encounters just to help cover up what's missing. Just in case you really have to push threat, or it's going to be a longer fight because maybe your DPS just aren't that geared yet, you're going to need to be able to hang 10 with the warriors and the druids in terms of pushing threat. And that could mean you're pushing for 30 to 40 seconds and maybe even longer just depending on the encounter. So just keep that in mind. Your mana issues are fixed, but definitely keep a lot of mana pots on you just to be sure. Alright, and so number 5, it's basically just better understanding your place in the raid and PvE environment. So of course, as a protection paladin, the Burning Crusade are going to be highly sought after for your kit and just what you can bring to the raid. But it's a double-edged sword, because, you know, it's not just going to be you that's they're going to be after. There's going to be a lot of other tanks. There's going to be a lot of other protection paladins. So the more that you understand about how the class is going to function in the Burning Crusade in terms of protection spec, that really gives you an advantage over some of the other people that maybe don't fully understand how to utilize their kit. And this comes back down to just understanding the encounters, the mechanics, where you would probably blossom the most in certain encounters, and just understanding your weaker encounters and what you might be able to do to counteract the weaknesses that you have against an encounter. And this could be through bringing extra pots or trying to get a certain trinket or piece of gear that helps you kind of negate that situation that you're in. And, you know, just doing things like that are really going to make you stick out and would probably definitely earn you a spot in a raid group. And it's just important to understand this, that way you understand where you're at position wise in your raid, because there's some raid groups that you're probably going to have to be push and threat like a motherfucker just because your DPS are super geared out. Maybe they have some tier 3 gear, and, you know, there are some other raid comps where maybe people aren't as geared and you're able to kind of not need to push as much, but maybe the fight's going to be longer because you don't have a lot of DPS. Therefore, maybe you just need to stack, you know, more defense gear. So the more gear that you have, the more knowledge and understanding of the encounters and how your class and spells and abilities interact with that encounter is going to be super, super important to how far you can go in the Burning Crusade. And that's pretty much it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm going to try to keep putting out probably 2 to 3 videos per week if I can. But I really hope you're enjoying the new content. I'm starting to get my head around this new program that I'm using. I really like how simplistic it is. I was using 3 to 4 programs in the old videos I was making, and it just took so long to make a video, but now I can really start putting these out pretty quick. But congratulations on surviving 2020, you guys, and I will see you all in the next one. If you like it, like, comment, subscribe, all that other stuff that YouTubers really like to say. But yeah, just be safe, have a good time, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.